You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. That's my homage to Derek. He is hopefully going to be joining us here in a little bit, but he got held up here just real quick. So, my name's Kevin. With us, our co-host Alex. How you doing this evening?
I'm good. This was an adventure. We desperately need Derek.
It's just different, right? He handles a lot of the mechanics.
He handles all of it. So for everybody that loves this show, first off, thank you. But secondly, if you like seeing us yap about fantasy football every Tuesday, you can thank Derek because he keeps us in task and keeps this thing looking good. I am good. I don't think there was anything really earth-shattering. Oh, I take that back. I'll ask you how you're doing, and then I'll tell you about the thing I saw today on the TV, which I'm pretty sure you saw too. So how are you doing?
No, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I am officially 1-0 as a head basketball coach. So we're starting off on the right foot. My children, both my kids, they're in immediate co-ed league. It was victorious Monday night, a whopping 17-5 victory where for my daughter, it was her first semi-competitive. It was her first basketball game. My son had played for 2 seasons leading up into this one. So, both of them played well. It's always nice to start the season off with a win. I don't care what you're doing. It's always nice to start off with a win, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about what you're doing, whether it's checkers, folding paper into origami, foot racing your cousin. Like I don't care what it is. Like if you can start with a win, you feel good about yourself. So that's where I'm sitting right now.
It is rather helpful, and we talked about your coaching debut, but I didn't hear the score. Lockdown defense by your squad. That's good. Limiting the other team to 5 points. That's some great lockdown D there, and that is coaching. Defense is coaching. Offense, you can do whatever, but defense is coaching. So a tip of the cap to you there, sir.
Yeah, running straight man to man, half court, like you can't press. So everybody's got to get back. So you're constantly yelling at the kid, "Hey, get back, turn around, find your guy." Yes. Like that was all I talked about. You guys are passing, great. You're doing good. Get your shots. That's awesome. Like you got to get back, and you got to find the person you're guarding. If you do nothing else, that's what I need you guys to do. And thank goodness the kids are responsive. If they listen to that, right? Like I'm a coach who talks to my players throughout the game. Like I don't just sit there, especially at this age, and just let the game develop. I probably over communicate to them maybe a little bit, and some would say, but it's just reminders like that. Like I don't, you miss your assignment, big deal. Like, okay, that's fine. It's the fundamentals. Get back, find your person, try and stay with them. Like simple man-to-man concept. Everything else we can work out.
There was another youth team that won over the weekend. Congratulations to the 2025 NBA champion Oklahoma City Thunder. They would not shut up about how young they were. That's the whole podcast.
That team
to ever do it.
People want to talk about the NFL being rigged. The NBA, I think, is rigged. That team.
You want to talk about a league that has had a referee scandal? Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Right. So many phantom calls against the teams that the Thunder played, and then the Thunder didn't hardly get called for any of it.
It helped that they caught a lot of breaks, right? I didn't watch all of the NBA playoffs, but look, they caught a Denver team that was, for one reason or another, just a little bit off, right? Outmanned, maybe just a little bit off. Oklahoma City, great team at home. I think more than anything in basketball, home court plays a huge advantage.
Yeah.
I think more than any other sport, if you're home court in the NBA, that's a huge advantage that you have. And it's not because that the fans will influence the opposing team, but I think the fans influence the referees. Like I really do think that that's the case.
Referees, and I think the
and it's
bench
just
players.
it's just human nature, right? There's nothing wrong with it. It's human nature. You want to make a big call. That is what it is. And Oklahoma City earned the right to be the home team in all of their series. So like that worked. That worked out for them. Congratulations. The oldest player on their team, 31-year-old Alex Cruz.
Yeah. So I feel bad for Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah.
Tearing his Achilles. Like I am beyond annoyed that we found out that it was Achilles injury because his dad decided to share that. Like once again, there's a reason we kicked him out. Like, and told him not to be present for any of this stuff. And then he gets back and then he has to be center stage again. Like, dude, shut up and sit down, buy a box of popcorn like everybody else.
Yeah. That's an unfortunate thing.
So I do feel bad for Halliburton, but I
feel bad for NBA fans that wanted that game, right? It's never fun when you have one of the best players, if not the best player on the other team, go down with an injury early, right? Like that's not fun. Imagine if this last Super Bowl that we had, right? It's Jalen Hurts against Patrick Mahomes. Imagine if Jalen Hurts gets hurt in the first quarter, or imagine if Patrick Mahomes gets hurt in the first. It kind of ruins the excitement of that game because one of the team's best players isn't participating, and that just kind of it's such a bummer. And it's as a fan, you get robbed of it.
Yeah, I'd agree. What else is going on? Did you see Aaron Rodgers?
That was the thing I was going to tell you. I saw on the TV today was that Aaron Rodgers said, "This is going to be it, and I'll believe it when I see it." I don't believe anything that guy says.
So this is the first time that he's actually mentioned him contemplating, like at the beginning of the season, really contemplating retirement and speaking about it to kind of this extent. So maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I'm still very interested to see how he fits in this Pittsburgh culture, right? Like Mike Tomlin has shown that he can take some pretty big and even abrasive personalities and keep it in the confines of their locker room. But he's never had a guy with a standing radio show with Pat McAfee before. And so you wonder how that's going to work. The thing about Pittsburgh is it's a winning organization. Like they find ways to win games. And so normally Aaron Rodgers is pretty quiet when they're winning games. So, 10-7 maybe, right? Like I think you could see Pittsburgh around that 10-7 mark and maybe a wild card team. I don't think they're going to win that division though.
That's what Pittsburgh is, right? Is a 10-7 team. Like they're always 10-7, right? Like that 10-6 before we went to a 17 game schedule. But like that's what Pittsburgh does with under Tomlin specifically.
So I don't know. I know Pittsburgh fans are kind of get tired of it, but there's a lot of teams in the NFL who would take consistently having 10 wins and then just take your chance in the playoffs.
Hope you get hot at the right time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Pittsburgh, I think for a long time was pretty happy with that. It's starting to wear on them just a little bit, but I mean, it's probably a discussion for another day, but if not Mike Tomlin, then who? Like, how do you upgrade if you're Pittsburgh from Mike Tomlin? Like he really is such an undervalued asset as far as head coaching ranks go that I think there's probably only 28 teams that wouldn't want Mike Tomlin, right? I mean, I think the Chiefs are set with Andy Reid. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are set with Sirianni. But outside of those three teams, like I have a hard time like really listing a team that wouldn't maybe Denver with Sean Payton because at the moment they saw the growth out of Drew Lock. Maybe. I mean, but outside of that, like if you're Baltimore, I'd give Baltimore one with Harbaugh. They're not looking for one. But if you're the Jets, I think the Patriots would take Mike Tomlin over Mike Vrabel, regardless of their history with him. The Dolphins, yep, they'd take him. The Jags, yep, they'd take him. Houston, I think they'd rather have Mike Tomlin than DeMeco Ryans if they were being like 100% honest with themselves. The Colts, like same situation. Like you can just go through the teams. Like who? So what? There's 4 teams that probably would say, "Nah, we're okay with where we're at," and then 28 other teams going, "Yeah, we want that guy."
Yeah. So I've pulled up the list of longest tenured NFL coaches, and Mike Tomlin tops the list. Right, has been in Pittsburgh for 18 years. John Harbaugh second, has been in Baltimore for 17 years. Andy Reid third, which Andy Reid third, but Andy Reid is not a spring chicken anymore. And there was talk 2 years ago that might be it, right? After they won that Super Bowl. So he's been there for 12 years, but he's been around a long time. Sean McDermott in Buffalo, he's been there 8 years.
That's crazy to
Sean
feel that with
McVay
Sean
in
McDermott.
LA has been there 8 years. Yeah, right. And then Kyle Shanahan for 8 years. So your top 6 longest tenured, you've got 18, 17, 12, 8, 8, 8. And then beyond that, you've got Matt LaFleur has been in Green Bay for 6 years. Zach Taylor with the Bengals, which is crazy that Zach Taylor's been there for 6 years. Stefanski's been in Cleveland for 5 years. Dan Campbell's been in Detroit for 4. Sirianni for 4. Dable for 3 with the Giants. My phone thought I said her name. Kevin O'Connell's been with the Vikings for 3. So we're getting into half the league has had a head coach for 3 years or less, more than half the league.
Mm-hmm.
And this year we are going to have not first year head coaches, right? That's not fair. But we will have coaches in their first year with that team. We'll have Mike Vrabel with the Patriots, his first year. Ben Johnson with the Bears. Aaron Glenn with the Jets. Pete Carroll with the Raiders. Brian Schottenheimer with the Cowboys. And Liam Cohen with the Jaguars. And Kellen Moore down there with the Saints. So we're talking about 4, 5, 6, 7 coaches, right around a third, almost a third of the league will have a coach in their first year with this team. And you know what's crazy? We're probably in a cycle where we won't see many coaching changes, but in another year or two, we'll probably see a lot of coaching changes with some of these guys that are now 3 and 4 years that maybe don't have the success that they kind of hoped. So yeah, all that to say, Mike Tomlin, great head coach, longest tenured head coach, his ability to be a player's coach and to understand kind of the ins and outs of a locker room versus a press conference. It's a masterclass. The guy, there's a reason he's been there for 18 years. There's a reason why Pittsburgh has had, 3 coaches in the last 60 years or whatever it is. That might be an exaggeration, but I don't think it is. Because they went from Cowher to Tomlin, and those 2 have been there for the last almost 40, I think. So it's pretty wild that organization seems to be on the rails. And I think there's only a handful of organizations that are like that. I think Denver before Pat Bowlen died was like that. I think there's been some figuring out that's gone on after his death, and with the new ownership group trying to figure out how to run an NFL franchise. But beyond that, the Cowboys, kind of tumultuous, right? The Browns.
I don't even know if it's kind of. They just don't know what they're doing right now.
Well, I think they prioritize profit. Other NFL owners prioritized wins, right? And that's fine. Whatever you're in, it's a business, right? It's a business. So some NFL owners thought that winning would get you profit. Some NFL owners thought that media exposure would get you profit, but either way, you're trying to make a profit. You're not doing this because it's a 501c3, right? This is a money-making opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All that to say, Aaron Rodgers, maybe his last year.
Yeah. And this is why you and I don't do a show. You and I love the rabbit trails, right? Like you and I get into so much of this.
Derek keeps
so
again.
Yeah. So in my best Derek impression, moving on. We are here tonight, right? So we're gonna be talking about tight end rankings, kind of go through where these tight ends are ranked 12 up to 1. We'll see kind of where we're at with time after the fact. If you're looking to see where we had 13 and below, check out YouTube. That video is posted from last week. You can get our take on guys like Hunter Henry, Kyle Pitts, and the likes of those guys. But leading into that, we're going to kick off the rankings with Tucker Kraft.
Prize appearance.
Ta-da!
What is up?
We were just about to get into tight ends.
Well, lucky me, I got here when I did.
That's right.
Yeah. What a wonderful. Kevin and I spent the first 16 and a half minutes of this episode going down a rabbit hole, which we said we can't do shows by ourselves because we will go down a rabbit hole for 16 and a half minutes and not talk about fantasy football. So
well, that happens.
Now we're here and we're going to start with the tight ends, Derek. It's good to see you.
It's good to be here. Good to be here on the Tuesday night, and glad to see your two faces and be able to chat and talk about some fun stuff tonight. So should be a good time, and we're kind of wrapping up the tight ends, right, and then we'll start getting into some of the other positions, running backs, wide receivers, the episodes to come. So I am. How are y'all doing? I'm sure that you guys already went through that and all that. But...
Oh, we're peachy, man. We're peachy.
There we go. Alrighty. Well, so we're starting with the tight ends, and right, last week we went through 13 through 24, so that leaves us 1 through 12 tonight. We're gonna go kind of back way our way into this one, and I think I heard it mentioned already that we were starting with Tucker Kraft. And Tucker Kraft last season, 50 receptions, 70 targets, 707 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Thoughts on Tucker Kraft?
I feel like Tucker Kraft is safe. Like, I don't know that Tucker Kraft has a super high ceiling. Like, I just don't envision him being into the top 5, especially you still have Luke Musgrave sitting around there, right? And I know he wasn't a big thing last year, but Luke was the guy until he got hurt 2 years ago. And then Tucker Kraft kind of took over at the end of the 23 season and then carried that forth in 2024. So you do still have another weapon there. Green Bay is littered with potential weapons in this offense right now. So there's a lot of targets to go around amongst all the players on this roster. So Kraft is safe. I think that he's going to be utilized. And that he's going to see some opportunities there in the red zone. So he is, in my opinion, he is a safe guy. You're looking at tight end 7 down to like tight end 13, which is a fairly decent range, but 7 touchdowns, there's a bit of flex in that, right? Maybe it goes up 1 or 2, maybe it goes down 1 or 2. But he is a part of the offense. They do find him, each week he's averaging about four targets, a little over 4 targets a game. So he is scripted in, and he does see red zone targets, which is a good thing. My biggest knock on him is you don't really see that boom week, right? Like he is kind of just going. I don't want to say going through the motions, but you kind of just know what you're going to get with Tucker Kraft each week, right? You're going to see, 3 catches, 55 yards, and maybe a touchdown. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that does not necessarily, I don't know, doesn't necessarily excite me when I see him pop up on the board. Like I either want to grab tight end before him, or I am waiting until some of the guys we spoke about last week and going for a value shot with some more upside in ROI than what I get from Tucker Kraft.
I think that's the best way to describe him is he's not there's nothing flashy about him, right? So if you want kind of reliability in the tight end spot and you're trying to get, some boom potential in other positions, especially if you're trying to take a risk at, receiver or running back, and you're like, I really like this guy, and I think that he might go off. And you're like, well, I'll take the risk there, but I can bank on the fact that I will have essentially built-in points with Tucker Kraft. I mean, the disappointing thing, he was never targeted more than 9 times last year, and realistically, 9 times was an outlier because he got targeted 7 times in week 18. He got targeted 6 times in week 9, and the rest of that was all below it. So, but on that flip side, when he does get targeted, they're quality targets because he's making catches on those targets, right? Like that, it's not like he's in the vicinity target. Like he's being thrown at. So I think he's a safe play. If you want a safe tight end, Tucker Kraft's your guy. I think if you want the potential for big weeks, but you're going to take your lumps because there will be weeks that they aren't so great, the guys that we talked about last week, there's plenty of them in that list. But like, that's why Tucker Kraft, this is a tough one because he's right at fringe tight end 1. So he could very easily be a tight end 2. He could very easily, work his way up a little bit more into tight end 1 territory with more touchdowns. But this is a tough one. He is a safe play, in my opinion, if you're trying to just give me a tight end to get some points.
I mean, he's the different side of the Zach Ertz coin, right? Like Zach Ertz last season went off for 66 receptions, 650 yards, and 7 touchdowns, right? Like we're talking a difference of like 4 catches and 50 yards, right? Over the same number of games, and they finished pretty close to each other, right? But Tucker Kraft in season last year averaged 3 catches for 41 yards. And yeah, that's fine. That's serviceable. That's a way not to get a goose egg. And that's kind of what I'm seeing. And if you string together 17 games in a row of that, you're going to finish in that fringe tight end 1 territory. But it's very much one of those that you're not going to, he's not going to goose egg you, but he's not going to go out there and win you the week either. And if I'm drafting a tight end in this range, there's other guys that I'd rather go with. There's even guys that I'd rather go with behind him, right? We talked about Jake Ferguson last week. Would far rather go with the Jake Ferguson coming off the board about 20 picks later, almost 2 rounds behind that, than I would rather spend a pick on Tucker Kraft. So Tucker Kraft is a guy that I think is fine if you want a floor play, but you're drafting him about at his ceiling at this point. And it is also one of those that while you're drafting him at his ceiling, I do think that the fact that they added a 1st round wide receiver in this one, that adds some more competition onto into the target range. Luke Musgrave may return, right? It was a tight end that they took in the same draft class over Tucker Kraft. So I think there could be some increased competition there. And who knows if we're going to see Green Bay flow more back to a pass-centric offense, or if they're going to stay very run-heavy like we saw last year. So there's a lot of question marks. And with that, I don't feel that great having put Tucker Kraft on my roster with where he's coming off the board right now.
So the couple things that I do like about him, right? I like the fact that he's on the field for 85% of the snaps, which is pretty good for a tight end.
Right.
I like the fact that he had a 71.5% catch rate. So to Alex's point, they were good quality targets. And I like the fact that he saw 13 red zone targets. That resulted in
7 touchdowns.
Yeah, that resulted in his touchdowns. So I'm okay. Those are the positives, right? And I think some of those metrics are fairly easy to duplicate, right? Like if he stays healthy, he has not done anything to lose favor with the Green Bay coaching staff. So you could see him on the field again for 85% of the snaps. You have to be on the field to get opportunity. So that is a good thing. And through all of these wide receivers that Green Bay does have, Tucker Kraft is the biggest body they have. Right? So they didn't necessarily address that in the draft. So I don't know that he sees 13 again, but I think we could pretty well pencil him in for 10 plus and just kind of see where that number takes us from there. And then it's just quality of targets and if he's getting open. So those are the few things that I do really like about the guy. He's a good athlete. He's on a team with so many weapons, and the dispersal tree in Green Bay is much greater than a lot of teams that we cover, and it makes it hard to pinpoint fantasy assets.
Fair enough. Any other thoughts on Tucker Kraft? All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over to the next tight end that we're going to talk about, and that is the rookie, Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren coming off the board. Tight end 11 out there. He's a rookie, so coming in fresh with a first-round draft capital. Thoughts out there on Tyler Warren?
I think Tyler Warren's success is largely determined on the quarterback throwing the ball. Tyler Warren in a redraft league is not where I am looking to take risk. So I will not have a whole lot of Tyler Warren in redraft leagues. I have a couple roster spots of Tyler Warren in dynasty leagues, especially if I grabbed him in a 2 tight end league, basically right after the draft, because I needed to solidify that position a little bit. I think I actually paired him with Tucker Kraft because I had been neglecting that position. But Indianapolis kind of scares me, right? Like we don't know what to make of that quarterback position. Does Michael Pittman kind of bounce back from a down year? Does A.D. Mitchell take another step forward and they're kind of using him a bit more for the downfield threats? You still have Pierce there. You still have I know I'm missing a guy and everyone's gonna be really frustrated with me. Doesn't matter. We're not talking about receivers, so I'm not going to break my brain about it. But nevertheless, Indianapolis has kind of been starved at tight end the last few seasons, right? Last year, I think we made a running joke that their roster coming in had like 8 tight ends on the roster, and only 2 of the guys we actually knew who the hell they were. Right. So at least now you have a guy at the top. I'll be interested to see kind of how they play him to begin with, because Mo Alley Cox is going to still be on that roster as kind of that big-bodied inline. So I'm curious to see how they're going to use Tyler Warren, but I'm going to be curious as a FAR. Maybe I'll use him as a DFS play if things kind of shake out in certain situations. Dynasty, yes. Redraft this year, no thank you. I am going to stay away from Tyler Warren because the quarterback situation scares the bejesus out of me, and a quarterback who's barely completing 50% of his passes, I don't care if he's throwing close to the tight end or not. That does not give me the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah, it's the inefficiency at quarterback that scares me. It's also tough for rookie tight ends to make a difference. There's a wise person that I used to work alongside that turned me on to this way of thinking, and that is the further away from the ball that you are at the snap, right? The easier it is for you to have an impact early on. So if you're a wide receiver that's playing on the outside, it's easier for you to have an impact because typically you're just running a go route and using your speed to get past somebody. Like that's why you're out there. But it is harder for tight ends as they are closer to the ball to have an impact. So to Kevin's point, for redraft this year, find something else. It's just tough. It's tough unless you want to play that game. I just think there's too much risk involved there. I think there are better options than a rookie tight end. So I am not looking at Tyler Warren this year. I think he's fine to stash away in your dynasty because he could be a thing. And truth be told, look, if Daniel Jones comes in halfway through the year, you might get a bit more production out of him. But again, it's not about. It's half about the quarterback. It's also half about him. And it's tough to learn an NFL offense from the tight end position because you have more responsibilities in the NFL as a tight end than you do in college.
Right. It's interesting, right? Because we have seen rookie tight ends step up and have monster productions in year one the last couple of seasons, right? Sam Laporta did it 2 seasons ago. Brock Bowers this last season, and there's a lot of people trying to figure out who that rookie tight end is going to be in this draft class that could do it. I don't see Tyler Warren being that guy that can do it. I don't know that there is a tight end this year that I'm going to hitch my wagon to like that, but yeah. That being said, with Tyler Warren, right there, you guys already mentioned it with the quarterback position, right? Like Daniel Jones, when we've seen him in his stints previously, like not a big not a quarterback that heavily targets a tight end, and we see really good fantasy output from that position there, right? Take that over and look at Anthony Richardson, and you guys mentioned the pass completion percentage. This was a quarterback that struggled to hit Michael Pittman 10 yards down the field, and it's not like they were really kind of dissimilar targets in what you would see a tight end going, and we saw the drastic fall from what Michael Pittman performed at last season for fantasy. And I don't know that we're going to see that big, come out and punch everybody in the mouth performance from Tyler Warren this rookie season. So on that note, I'm out. I'd rather draft a tight end earlier than this, or kick that can further down the road and take a tight end much later in the draft. Any other thoughts on Tyler Warren? Alrighty, let's go ahead and take a look at quarterback or tight end number 10 coming off the board, and that is David Njoku. David Njoku last season, 64 receptions, 97 targets, 505 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Thoughts on David Njoku?
Well, Njoku's a guy that I liked a lot going into last year. It was a love-hate relationship, right? Like definitely some turmoil there, and as far as the quarterback position, yet again, some things are changing there with Cleveland. Eh, I don't, I don't know. Like I think I like Njoku for best ball. I don't know that I love him for redraft. Like I just don't think the consistency is going to be there again because of the quarterback situation. Now, if Flacco wins that job, I could completely change my tune because David Njoku was a top 5 fantasy tight end down the stretch when Joe Flacco was with the Cleveland Browns 2 years ago. Like he absolutely, I'm not going to say leaned on him, but the two of them had a lot of chemistry, and you could see that they were on the same page from the get-go. We'll see if Cleveland decides to go that route and give the ball to Flacco to start. A little early to make that determination just yet. So for now, I'm lukewarm on David Njoku. If Flacco's the quarterback, I will look kind of at his 23 production more so than his production last year. And I reserve the right to amend my thoughts based on who the starting quarterback is. Because if it's Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, I am out on David Njoku. If it's Joe Flacco, if I can get him at tight end 10, I feel like there's at least a little bit of upside provided in with that.
To me, David Njoku is like the epitome of a best ball tight end. Because let's go back and look at his last season where he played week 1, missed 3 weeks, came back, had 1 catch for 14 yards in week 5, 5 catches for 31 yards in week 6. Then he goes off for 10 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown in week 7. Gets you another touchdown in week 8. Has a ho-hum 5 catches on 7 targets for 29 bye week, and then just goes ham for 3 weeks, with the exception of the game against Pittsburgh. But like he gets a game where he has 9 catches on 17 targets against Denver and 2 touchdowns. But then he also missed week 15, missed week 17. So like you have to ride a roller coaster with David Njoku, mostly based on whoever's playing quarterback there in Cleveland. But I think he is a best ball candidate. He scares the ever living out of me if I'm looking for reliability in the tight end position. No, thank you with David Njoku, but man, does he have the ability to pop off and give you some big weeks.
Right. And this is one of those that, I'm going to kind of echo Kevin's sentiments here that it strongly depends on who the quarterback is for me, right? If Joe Flacco's the guy, like David Njoku during that time stretch, just a couple seasons ago, was a force for fantasy, right? If it's anybody else in that quarterback room that wins that job, Dylan Gabriel, Shadur Sanders, Kenny Pickett, like doesn't matter. Anybody else with Joe Flacco, I'm pretty much out on David Njoku. But if Joe Flacco's the guy, it wouldn't surprise me if we see Joe Flacco, David Njoku for a season-long thing that David Njoku returns top 5 tight end value. So it is very much on who the quarterback is at this point. If it's Flacco, I'm in. If it's anybody else, I'm pretty much out on that one. Any other thoughts on David Njoku?
No, I'll reserve my right to change my mind later.
Okay. All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over to Jonnu Smith. And Jonnu Smith last season, 88 receptions, 111 targets, 884 yards through the air, and 8 touchdowns. Thoughts on Jonnu Smith?
I want to like Jonnu. Like, I want to say that last year wasn't just a flash in the pan, but he's due for some regression. Like, career year for him last year with his usage and obviously the touchdowns and everything else. So I am a bit nervous for Jonnu Smith. So the good thing was last year he was seeing 6.5 targets a game. So, and to see 6.5 targets a game, part of that was because Tua was out, but a lot of that production was after Tua came back and kind of rolling there with him. So I just think there's so many things with Jonnu that I am worried about. Number one is the Miami offense. Like, until last year with Jonnu Smith, Miami basically did not even acknowledge that they had a tight end on the field.
Right.
And all of a sudden, Mike Gesicki leaves town. Like, we all thought Mike Gesicki was a great athlete, right? A very good tight end, or potentially a good tight end. And Miami just never did anything with him. He left town. Jonnu steps in. All of a sudden, they realize they have one. The 8 touchdowns kind of worries me a little bit with Tyreek coming back. You still have Waddle. Obviously, you have Devon Achane there at running back. Like, it's a number that I think is going to be hard for him to repeat a little bit. So I'm not saying don't draft Jonnu Smith. I'm just saying that I am personally feeling there's a bit of regression, and he's going to be closer to tight end 12 than his tight end 4 finish from last year.
I have mad respect for Jonnu Smith. I traded for him last year, halfway through the year, and he was clutch for me. So I like that was a hell of a run that he went on. And it was beneficial for me. But I think you're right, Kevin. I don't think he can replicate it again this year. And we're already seeing a lot of other people think that too, because he finished, as you guys said, tight end 4 last year. So I think there's a lot of people who are shying away from that as a possibility. So I like him. I think there's a lot to like about the Miami offense just because of, Mike McDaniel, but he might be the piece that I would avoid. I had a ton of pieces of it last year. I had Tua, I had Achane in the home league. I had Raheem Mostert, who was there last year, and Jonnu. So that's too many pieces. It didn't serve me well. But I think I would have to think long and hard when I'm sitting there on the draft board and I still need tight end and Jonnu Smith is available. But I think the right call is to pass on that, because I don't think where he's going is where it might be where the top of where he ends up, but I think more likely it's lower than this.
Yeah, I feel like you're probably drafting him kind of more at the floor you're probably drafting more at the ceiling than the floor at this point for Jonnu this season. Certainly made an impact in that Miami offense. They certainly found a way to get him involved. Tua certainly looked for him. All of those things were very, very positive there. This is a guy though that things. I mean, things may not necessarily be looking so rosy between him and the organization, though, right? Like this is a guy that didn't report to the mini camp. There's been several trade rumors circling around on that. I haven't seen that he's officially requested a trade or anything like that, but this is again one of those that when players start missing camps and missing mini camps, and that contract disputes start to kind of piling up and going later into the season, that typically doesn't spell good things for fantasy production here, right? So that is something that I'm keeping an eye on here as well. As what does that look like? And I think that this is an offense too, right? Like Tua had one of his lowest average depth of targets last season, right? Like some of that I think had to do with the offensive line and them trying to keep him healthy when he returned, some of that. But I have a feeling that you're going to see that Miami try and stretch the ball a little bit more so this season than they did last year. And if they're stretching the ball more so, I think that that's going to benefit more Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill more so than the tight end position here. So tight end 9 or where you're drafting him, I feel like that's probably about where you're going to see him finish. And I'm not necessarily looking to draft a guy at his ceiling for tight end right, as we've discussed some of these other tight ends, I think there's some other guys that you can potentially get better value for and take it with the later pick. Any other thoughts on Jonnu Smith? All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over and talk about Evan Ingram. And Evan Ingram last season, 47 receptions, 64 targets, 365 yards, and 1 touchdown. Thoughts on Evan Ingram?
So a bit of an injury shortened season for Evan Ingram. Did all that in 9 games, right? Had some hamstring and shoulder issues that caused him to be shut down early. Had an amazing 2023 campaign. And I feel like there is a bounce back coming, and we may not see a duplicate of 2023, but I think we're going to see pretty stinking close to it. The Denver Broncos organization has had a lot of positive things to say about Evan Ingram. Ingram and Bo Nix have seemingly gotten along from the very get-go, and Evan Ingram has gone out of his way when the media is talking to him about complimenting and praising the young quarterback there in Denver. So I would not be surprised if he was kind of the true number 2 in Denver. We've seen Sean Payton offenses run like this before, right? You had an alpha in Michael Thomas or Joe Horn back in the day, and then you had Jimmy Graham kind of running that number 2 from the tight end position. I don't feel like Evan Ingram is as fast as Jimmy Graham is necessarily, but I think Peyton is smart enough to be able to scheme him open nevertheless. He's a good red zone body. He can catch the ball and move an open field. So I like Ingram. He is a guy that I am targeting, right? If I'm set that I want kind of a solidified tight end 1 and not have the risk built in necessarily, I am buying Evan Ingram and the rise of the Denver Broncos offense. And after him, I will pick it all the way down to Jake Ferguson, right? So I will be waiting rounds and multiple rounds to then look at maybe like a Jake Ferguson or something like that. So I like the guy. He's obviously coming into his age 30 season for tight end. That's not necessarily crippling. You do worry about a couple of the injuries. Hamstring injuries are nothing to joke around about. But 24 might have been the exception. 23 and 26, he played all 17 games. But the rest of his career, he's missed at least one, right? And so maybe you do see some downtime with him just a little bit, but you felt like he was kind of kicking that injury title until last year when the hammy and shoulder creeped up on him here a little bit. But nevertheless, he is a guy that I am looking at for my starting tight end position.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kevin. I agree that he will be an asset, I think, in this Denver offense, and it'll be interesting to see how Sean Payton utilizes him. As we've seen, Sean Payton can make a tight end do crazy things. But I go back to a quote that I heard many, many moons ago, and that is, your best ability is availability. And he wasn't very available last year. Now, when he was available last year, he was great. But man, what a frustrating year, because he wasn't available all that much. So I think you have to be careful. I think if you draft an Evan Ingram, you probably should have an insurance policy. Like I think you shouldn't bank on the fact that he is going to provide you 15 games worth of production in your fantasy league. So I think if you go in with the intent of giving yourself an insurance policy, Evan Ingram's a great pick.
Yeah, I don't have a problem taking the Evan Ingram route, right? Like this last season, was a little bit banged up there. But over the last few seasons before that, certainly didn't really have that, right? 2020 played all 16 games before the league expanded into the 17 game there. 2021 missed the 2 games at the start of the season, and then played 2 consecutive seasons, and then last season had the injury bug creep up there. All of that being said, right, like Sean Payton does like the Joker role in his offense, and Evan Ingram can certainly play that and fill that role here. Also, from a tight end perspective, right, like Evan Ingram has had tremendous fantasy season when especially there's only kind of one other guy that he's really competing for targets against, and that's another situation that we find him in here in Denver, right, where Cortland Sutton's really going to be his biggest competitor when it comes to targets on this. And I think both of those guys could end up having outstanding seasons. Wouldn't surprise me if we look up at the end of the season and see Evan Ingram actually finish with the most targets on this team. And if that, and if we do see something like that transpire, that's going to lead to an absolutely fantastic fantasy season, something to the extent like we've seen in years past where we see a top 5 type of finish, and wouldn't surprise me to see that Evan Ingram finish something like that. This is a guy that I feel like you're drafting more at his floor than his ceiling, and I think there's some tremendous upside that can be had here. So I do like that, and again, right, like Alex, if you're subscribing to the kind of those concerns Alex is throwing out there, take Evan Ingram where he's going, and then wait a little bit, and you can get another guy like a Jake Ferguson several rounds later to pair that up with, and I think you'll be in really good shape there. Any other thoughts on Evan Ingram? All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over and talk about Mark Andrews. And Mark Andrews last season, 55 receptions, 69 targets, 673 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Thoughts on Mark Ingram?
So one of the things that I like most about Mark Ingram is every year.
You guys both did it. You both did it. It's Mark Andrews.
What did I say?
Derek said Mark Ingram, and then you parroted it back to him.
I did.
All right. Well, then we're restarting.
Conscious.
So Mark Andrews last season, 55 receptions, 69 targets, 673 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Thoughts on Mark Andrews?
One of the things that I like most about Mark Andrews is the fact that every year he has seen double-digit red zone targets. So sometimes the yards aren't there, sometimes the catches aren't there, as we've seen this Baltimore offense change and kind of um, go from dominant running to maybe some breakout with Lamar Jackson, and then you bring in Derrick Henry, and then you kind of get the best of both worlds. He still sees those targets, right? And so I feel like I can bank on that. So he had 17 red zone targets last year, which he ended up getting his 11 touchdowns from. Even with the emergence of Derrick Henry, even with the emergence, at least for 1 week, of Isaiah Likely before he kind of disappeared. You still have Rashad Bateman. You have Zay Flowers there now. So you do have some weapons in Baltimore. But I don't mind Mark Andrews. I really don't. Like, I do feel like there's some consistency there, and touchdowns are difficult to determine and replicate. But I feel like with this Baltimore offense, they are efficient enough through the regular season and being able to lean on Derrick Henry for large chunks of the game. And then there's still certain games where they just blow up, right? And Baltimore just seems to score at will. Mark Andrews will find a way to get his. So I have no issues being able to get him. You almost feel like it's at a bit of a value compared to where he's been going in years past. Realistically, I feel like this feels about right. I think there's a little bit of ceiling that you could still get with Mark Andrews, but I don't feel like um I don't feel like there's a very low floor, if that makes sense, right? Like, I don't see him finishing outside of tight end one area. So you get that little bit of flex, but the touchdowns ultimately will save the day a little bit. So as long as he's healthy and he's able to play just like he was last year, there's no reason why you shouldn't see Andrews with another, 12 or 13 red zone targets, call it 9 touchdowns. Maybe a little bit of regression from the 11 he saw last year, but then again, depending on what you get, I mean, you could see that 11 jump up to 13. But Andrews, consummate pro. I like Mark Andrews. He's been solid for Baltimore ever since he came out. And it's a contract year. And it's a contract year.
Which we love a contract year. I think what's crazy is that you can potentially get Mark Andrews, who has the ability to finish as a top 5 tight end. You could get a top 5 in a position in the middle of the 8th round. That is insane value to me. So I like Mark Andrews, especially if he's sitting there in the 8th round and you're picking. What a great way to go grab a number 1 tight end, right? You can have filled out wide receiver, running back, and quarterback even at that point. And now you've got your number 1 tight end in the middle of the 8th round. Like that's brilliant. If a draft board falls to you that way, smash draft, move on, be done with it.
Right. And this is one of those that I feel like you're absolutely drafting him at his floor here, right? The ceiling is, we've seen him go all the way up to tight end 1, tight end 2 on the season. So I feel like you're getting that value built in there on this. I don't know that we see the 11 touchdowns come back through, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see him still with 8, 9 type of touchdowns when this season's all said and done. Probably somewhere around the 700 to 800 yards through the air and 60 to 70 receptions. Like, I think that there's some tremendous value on this one, and you got to like a guy that's a focal point in an offense that can put up a lot of points and put up a lot of points in a hurry. So, I do
80% catch rate.
Right.
That is what's nice. So even if there's not a peppering of targets, he makes the most of what he's getting right now. 80% catch rate last year is amazing.
And not only that, the chemistry is certainly there between him and Lamar, right? Like that has been his most steady, reliable target through Lamar's career at this point. So, I just there's really not much that I'm seeing as far as a downside when it comes to drafting Mark Andrews here. Any other thoughts on Mark Andrews? All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over to Travis Kelce. And Travis Kelce last season, 97 receptions, 800 on, Travis Kelce last season, 97 receptions, 133 targets for 823 yards and 3 touchdowns. Thoughts on Travis Kelce?
I don't know that you're going to see his role change a whole lot this year. Like, I think you could almost copy and paste, and it's not quote unquote prime Travis Kelce, but it is extremely serviceable Travis Kelce when you're not having to draft him in the 2nd or 3rd round. So, I don't mind it. The Chiefs' schedule on paper is a little bit rough, on a little bit on the difficult side, I should say, for the tight end position. So that is maybe a cause for concern. I've been one that I've kind of, not that I faded Travis Kelce, but I was never willing to pay the 2nd or 3rd round premium that came with his price tag. So maybe I'm looking at him there, but my issue truly is there's so many running backs and receivers in this area where Travis Kelce's going, that as I'm building out my roster, I think I'd rather wait another round or two and kind of forego Travis Kelce. So great player. He's had an amazing career. I still think he's going to be, looking at, roughly anywhere from 6, maybe 7 targets a game, just because of how this Kansas City offense is built. Maybe you see that slip down to 5 targets a game. That is entirely possible. But even at, 70 catches instead of 82, you can still see Kelce be extremely productive if he's getting a little bit open or more open in the red zone, right? Like, you could see him drop reception total, but increase from 6 to 12 touchdowns, and it more than makes up for itself. So there's plenty of possibilities to where, this is about Kelce's floor, right? You could still see him jump up a little bit and grab that upper end value if you're willing to take tight end, kind of in that 2nd tier, if you will, behind Bowers and Trey McBride. So dealer's choice here. I have no issues with people taking him. I'm leaning that I won't, just because of where he's going, but I've surprised myself before.
I think it's tough because we're judging him on his past, and his past broke the mold, right? Like, his past had us drafting tight end in the 1st round. I don't know that we're drafting tight end in the 1st round this year. We certainly aren't this year. But we may not be drafting tight end in the 1st round for a while. If Brock Bowers can become kind of Travis Kelce-like, but he's the guy we're going to compare the tight end position to from here on out, right? Like, Travis Kelce, we compared to Gronk before. Like, Gronk was a great tight end. I don't know that he was Travis Kelce-like, but like, so like we are kind of right, wrong, or indifferent. We were judging him based on what he was, which was insane. And that's just not what he is anymore. All that to say, he's still a serviceable tight end. I mean, shoot, last year he played every game. He had some boom weeks. He had some dud weeks. You get a few more touchdowns out of him. I think that was the huge disappointment last year, was the touchdowns. And he's
still had
back
26 red zone targets, even with the touchdowns being down.
And so like that'll happen. Like, it just didn't work out. And that's football. It's why you play the game. But I think I still like Travis Kelce. I think I like him a little bit more now that I don't have to spend 1st round or 2nd round or even 3rd or 4th round capital on him. I think it's a little bit easier to swallow. But I would be happy with him, again, filling out the rest of my roster, and then, not the rest of my roster, but filling out areas where I think I can have an advantage at receiver and running back. And then, come where's he going? About 85th. So we're talking 6th, 7th round. Like, that's great. I'd take Travis Kelce in the 6th or 7th round. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I can agree with that. As far as where he's coming off the board now, where you draft him, yeah, seems pretty, yeah, kind of feels right there. But that was one of those that if you had told me, before I looked it up that he had 97 receptions, I would have said no, there was no way that we had that, right? Because Travis Kelce in any season before that, when was averaging 12, 13 yards a reception on that. And that's where, you were typically seeing him, get that 13, 1400 yards come from, because the reception total really isn't that different than any of the previous seasons we've seen since 2018, right? It's really not. It's certainly in that range. The targets were all in that range. The biggest outliers were the yards and the touchdowns, right? He went from being around that double digit touchdowns to 3, and that 12 to 1400 yards down to 800, right? I don't know that we're going to see the yardage necessarily tick up on this one. I think we'll probably see him still somewhere in that 80 to 90 receptions this season. I think we're probably going to see him around that 800 yards. And with the way they do that, I think you probably see a little bit of an uptick here in touchdowns as well. Maybe see him get up to that 5-6 type of range. But all of that to say that I think there is some value here, and this is a draft pick, well made in this kind of range. Any other thoughts out there on Travis Kelce? All righty, let's go ahead and head on over and look at TJ Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson last year, 41 receptions, 62 targets, 455 yards, and 0 touchdowns. Thoughts on TJ Hawkinson?
So TJ's another guy that I do like here a little bit, right? We are going to see a quarterback change in Minnesota. McCarthy seems to be at least getting good, some good pub coming out of Minnesota. They like how he's handling the offense. They like what he's been able to digest, obviously being there last year and kind of getting used to things in the playbook. So the quarterback play might be better than what a lot of people are at least from the outside thinking initially. And typically that means a good thing for TJ Hawkinson. The run game isn't overly strong in Minnesota. So I think they're going to struggle finding a lot of room there on the ground, even with Aaron Jones coming back. So it's going to lean on McCarthy's right arm a little bit. And this is going to be one of those situations where I believe he's going to lean on Hawkinson a lot, especially early in the season. As he's getting used to the speed of the NFL, he's going to find his comfort zone. He's going to be using his checkdowns a little bit more. Yes, you're going to take your couple shots to Jefferson and potentially Addison if he's on the field. But I think TJ is poised to have a really strong year. All that said, typically you don't see a lot of touchdowns out of rookie quarterbacks, right? Like you did see a couple guys kind of break the mold last year between Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels. But typically touchdowns aren't necessarily falling down excessively for rookie quarterbacks. So maybe this is closer to his ceiling than not, but I do think his floor is probably like tight end 10 or 11. So I don't think his floor is dramatically lower where you're going to shoot yourself for taking him.
So I struggle with TJ Hawkinson for reasons that you've said, Kevin. The rookie quarterback, the fact that Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are lining up again, on the same field as him, and the fact that there isn't really a run game to kind of take some of the pressure off of JJ McCarthy, which I think makes things a little bit more difficult for quarterbacks. I know it makes things more difficult. I'm also a little bit concerned about TJ Hawkinson's ability to stay on the field. Now, granted, the 7 games that he missed last year were at the start of the season as he was coming back from the horrific knee injury he had at the end of the season before. So that's tough. And I think if you extrapolate what he did last year, it would have been a fine season. But the problem is he never found the end zone. And that's really disappointing and like kind of weird. And so to your point, Kevin, that touchdowns aren't exactly easy to come by for rookie quarterbacks. And yes, JJ is not technically a rookie, but when he starts his first NFL game, he's starting his first NFL game, presumably in week 1. So like it's still, you can practice and you can look at film all you want. It is still different once you get out there. So I think that's a bit of a cause for concern. It gives me a bit of a pause when I look at TJ Hawkinson. I think where he's going is fine. Kind of there around pick 80. Finds the end zone, it'll be great, but I think it'll be tough. I think, to be honest, I think I would for sure rather have Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, Mark Andrews is going, 2 rounds later. I think I'd rather take that and give myself an option. Hawkinson just doesn't do it for me where he's going.
Yeah, I don't have a problem drafting Hawkinson where he's going, right? Like this is a guy that when he plays all the games, he's a top 5 tight end in the league, right? Like fantasy production when he's in there and he plays, it's there, right? The problem is, and you mentioned it, is over the last few seasons, he's missed a significant amount of time. So there is some of that to be concerned about there as well, right? The rookie quarterback coming in does give some pause and does give some concern. However, at the same time, right, like Kevin O'Connell as an offensive, minded head coach has certainly proven the ability to take, a bunch of different quarterbacks and make them highly successful and have the scheme and have the game plan fit to make these guys really, really stand out and look good, right? So that mitigates some of that concern for me from the quarterback position, just from the standpoint of, we think about when Kirk Cousins went down 2 seasons ago and all of the quarterbacks that they brought in along the way, they look good for the most part there, right? And some of these guys had no idea what the play was, and they were asking their teammates in the huddle, like, what they just called this play, like, where's the ball supposed to go, right? Like, it was very much trial by fire on the field, and the quarterbacks were still putting up, having good performances out there. Saw Sam Darnold resurrect a career on that one as well, right? Like this is a guy that had been journeyman and couldn't seem to kind of find that spot, and came in, looked really good in that offense. So I think that there is something to be said there on that front. And I'm not necessarily that worried about TJ Hawkinson returning value on where he's being returned, because I do think that, where you're drafting him, it's probably his floor. Ceiling might be about 1 or 2 spots ahead of that, but it doesn't give me much pause on where we're still having to take him in that 6th, 7th round type of position here. Any other thoughts on TJ Hawkinson? All righty, let's go ahead and look over at Sam Laporta. And Sam Laporta last season, 60 receptions, 83 targets, 726 yards, 7 touchdowns. Thoughts on Sam Laporta?
So Laporta kind of quietly finished tight end 7 last year after really kind of bumming folks out with how his season started. So Detroit's an interesting one because they're another team. They have a bunch of weapons. They just have a lot of weapons there. Laporta should fit in nicely as kind of, he's not even the second guy. He's the third guy in most situations, and you're not even talking about Gibbs or Monty. Like, you're just talking behind Amon-Ra and then Jameson Williams. So I don't mind Laporta, but I don't think I want to take him as the 4th tight end off the board. Like, feel like that is the absolute ceiling, and anything that doesn't reach there, you're kind of falling back on. So I think I would rather wait to look at a Travis Kelce, to look at a Mark Andrews, to look at Evan Ingram. Like, I think any one of those three guys and being able to capture the potential upside makes me feel a bit better than knowing that I drafted Laporta, who's a very good young tight end, but with all the mouths that they have to feed in Detroit, feeling like I drafted him at his absolute ceiling.
Yeah, this is a tough one too, because last year he finished third on the team in yards, but and third on the team in targets, and second on the team in receptions, behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. But the targets, Jameson Williams is a gunner. They're going to throw that ball, and it's a 50-50 shot on most of the balls being thrown Jameson's way. The running back position, I think, does that. Like, both of those guys can catch the ball well out of the backfield with Monty and Gibbs. So that does kind of create some of the advantage that a tight end has in some of those short yardage situations that a running back might take away some of those. But I think well, before I get into saying that I think that he's a good pick here, we do also have to recognize that they lost their offensive coordinator. Ben Johnson's gone. So that's something that you have to put into consideration. They're learning a new offense, and as is customary for Jared Goff, he has to learn a new offense yet again and again and again. So I like Sam Laporta. I think that he's a solid pick. Tough when he's going tight end 4, when he probably finishes in that tight end 5 or 6 range. Although, who's going to usurp him? Andrews, if he gets more touchdowns. Kelce, if he gets more touchdowns, I can see him working his way up there. I like Sam Laporta. I think it's tough to take him where he's going at the moment, but in the right situation, I would be okay with it. I want a piece of the Detroit offense. I don't know if Sam Laporta is the piece. I think you're going to have to spend too much, but I like him. I like him.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like when you with how he plays on the field, right? From a fantasy production, though, I feel like this is a bit of a reach on this one, right? This upcoming season, I think we probably see a little bit more rinse and repeat of last year than we did his rookie season, right? I think that we probably see him somewhere around 60 to 70 catches, 700 to 800 yards, and probably that 6 to 7 touchdowns, right? Like, that's going to put him kind of right there in that same position, which is probably good for somewhere in tight end 5-6 range. And so drafting him at 4, I think, is a bit of a reach, a bit of an overdraft. And this is a guy that quite frankly, I'm just willing to be wrong on the draft capital on this one. So Sam Laporta will not be on many of my my rosters this season. Any other thoughts on Sam Laporta? All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over to take a look at George Kittle. And George Kittle last season, 78 receptions, 94 targets, 1,106 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Thoughts on George Kittle?
I really like George Kittle this year. Debo gone, Brandon Ayuk. Who knows if he wakes up and decides he wants out of San Francisco, if he's still there. You have Ricky Pearsall, who they drafted in the first round last year, who I'm expected to take a step forward. And then McCaffrey's back. Okay, great. But the San Francisco defense is not as good as it has been. So they need offense to generate more points, right? There's more that is going to be asked of Brock Purdy and company on that side of the ball than what we have seen here the past couple seasons. We saw the beginning of it last year. Where the defense was just injured and kind of just not its normal self. So, excuse me. I like Kittle. I think that even drafting him at tight end 3, I think there's room for him to finish tight end 1. Like, I do think there's a world where that happens this season. So I don't mind him. I think he's probably going to be, second on the team in targets. no matter what kind of shakes out at that number one receiver spot, whether it's Ayuk or Pearsall. But he's still able to provide some explosiveness, right? 14, just over 14 yards per catch last year. Touchdowns are there. He's a gritty guy. He loves to play in San Francisco. Like, he just feeds off the crowds and just the fan base in general. So I like Kittle. I think that he's absolutely a guy that I'm intrigued by, right? If I'm looking to change things up a little bit, this could be a position where I could change things up a bit. If decide I would like to go tight end early and wait on quarterback, this isn't a bad spot for me at pick 43, right? So you're getting into the fourth round a little bit, so you can kind of set your base in rounds 1 through 3, grab Kittle in the fourth, and then kind of see how you want to round out the rest of your starting lineup. I think there's plenty of options that you could do in that situation. So green light for George Kittle, from my opinion, this year.
We haven't really talked too much about tight end tiers, and I think that you did, Kevin, mention that Bowers and McBride are kind of the top two there, but Kittle has an argument to be associated with them, probably more so than he does with any of the previous guys we've talked about. I think he's got more of an argument to be associated with those two than previous. So I agree with you. I think in the fourth round where he's going there, it's a good way to set yourself up. You go, if you go running back, receiver, running back, and then you go Kittle there, like, that's not bad, given that you're probably going to get a guy who's going to finish, if he plays the whole year again, who's going to finish the season no worse than tight end 5, right? He plays the whole year with the vacation, with Debo getting out of town. I think that's a great spot where you can gain a positional, not a total advantage, but where you can gain positional advantage there in that fourth round, and then reassess things and not have to worry about the tight end position, and not have to worry about the draft board falling to you, and not have to sweating it out to think like, oh, I can get Mark Andrews in the 8th. Can I still get Mark Andrews in the 8th? Like, that's going to be difficult. Not, see a wild card come around there. So I think he's a good pick there in the fourth round to kind of settle your roster down, especially if you're going to go for maybe a flashier or a riskier pick in the first 3 rounds.
Fair enough. Yeah, most of the times when we get on here, and we talk about George Kittle in a lot of seasons past, it was it's a little too streaky. It's a little bit, boom bust, like, got there off of, realistically 4 or 5 games. Like that is not really the case that we're starting to see here. From George Kittle in San Francisco over the last couple of seasons. Like, this is starting to become far more of a consistent game in, game out, putting up great performances for you. And you're not just relying on a few boom weeks throughout the season to get there season long. So I do like George Kittle this year, right? Kevin mentioned some of the departures and some of the changeover as far as what the weapons look like there. Alex, you made some great points as well when it comes to the tier type of systems, and I think that you may be right that we probably can start talking about George Kittle, the top three tight ends kind of being right there in the same breath, so to speak, when it comes to Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, and George Kittle. And where George Kittle is going, I do like the fact that I can get a little bit of a discount from a draft capital perspective over the likes of Brock Bowers or Trey McBride, simply from the standpoint that if I'm going Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, I've got to pretty much spend a second round pick on that to make that happen. Whereas George Kittle, I can get that with a 4th round pick. So I do like the fact that I probably see those 3 guys competing very similarly this year for fantasy output, but I get a 2-round discount on George Kittle. So I do like that one there. Again, tight end, spending one of my top 4 picks on a tight end. little bit leery on how I like to put together rosters, but certainly can make some good things happen with the roster construct going that way. Any other thoughts on George Kittle? All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at Trey McBride. And Trey McBride last year, 111 receptions, 147 targets, 2 touchdowns, and 1,146 yards through the air. Thoughts on Trey McBride?
One Trey McBride is my tight end 1 this year. So I absolutely love his situation. I love the fact that, yeah, Arizona spent a ton of draft capital on the defense, but they're still young and unproven. So you figure that Arizona is going to be trailing in a lot of games, and he is going to have the ability to kind of chunk up some of those garbage time points in Arizona that many of the tight ends that we've spoken about tonight are not going to be able to see. So he's a young guy, 25 years of age. Kyler will look for him in the red zone. Kyler looks for him over the middle of the field. A 27% target share that he had last year. That's insane for a tight end. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that's slightly reduced, but with only 2 touchdowns, there's a ton of room for that to balance out. So even if his target share drops to 23% and you see those touchdowns jump from 2 to 5 or 6, you're going to offset that differential in points very, very easily. So I'm all about some Trey McBride this year, and if you like going tight end early, you want to diversify how your roster construct looks. I absolutely endorse just smashing yes on this and creating that positional advantage from the rest of your league.
Totally agree with you, Kevin. And I think the disappointing thing about Trey McBride's 2 touchdowns last year was that they came in week 17, if you had him in your championship, and week 18, which, as we all know on this podcast, we don't play week 18 for fantasy football. So what a waste. One of his 2 touchdowns you couldn't even take advantage of. I think that's kind of the disappointing thing about what his season was last year. Yeah, if he's your guy, go get your guy. You're gonna have to spend on it, but I think you gain the positional advantage. So go get your guy.
Right. And this is one that I think we do see some regression towards the mean when it comes to touchdowns, right? Like this is one of those that I firmly believe when we look up, we'll probably see 6-7 touchdowns from Trey McBride. Not going to surprise me if we see him clear the triple digits when it comes to receptions again and clear the 1,000-yard mark for receiving yards on this one. So this is a guy that you're right. You got to spend up. You got to take a top 2 pick on it. But at the same time, this is a guy that can potentially create a positional advantage. And with that being said, it wouldn't surprise me to see him lead the Cardinals in targets again this season. So I do think it's wheels up for Trey McBride, and interested to see how this thing ultimately pans out
when it's all said and done. And again, 2 touchdowns right at the end of the year. That's almost impossible given how much he saw the football last year. Do you think he would be closer to 10 touchdowns next year or closer to 2 touchdowns next year?
Honestly, I think we're looking at 6. So it's split in the middle.
I mean, with the amount of targets that he gets,
I'll take close to 10. I want to be optimistic.
Be closer to 10. Man, he saw the ball so much last year. Like, again, it is almost statistically impossible for him to only have the 2 touchdowns with the amount of targets and receptions he had.
And you would think if Marvin Harrison Jr. takes his next step forward, right? A little bit of a disappointing rookie campaign for Marvin Harrison Jr. But if he's able to take his next step, do defenses focus more on Harrison?
Yes.
Because it's typically a deeper route. He has a bit more speed behind him, right? That gash play. does that free up the middle of the field for just a half a second for Trey McBride? And we all know that a half a second makes all the difference in the world when you're looking at tight windows in the NFL. But I guess some things probably have to go his way to get to 10 touchdowns. But Derek's saying 6. I would tell you over. Like if he set the line at 6, I would take the over on that.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it just like, again, statistically, what an anomaly for his line last year.
Right. All righty. Any other thoughts here on Trey McBride? All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over and talk about tight end. First tight end coming off the board, and that is Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers last season, 112 receptions, 153 targets, 1,194 yards through the air, and 5 touchdowns. Thoughts on Brock Bowers?
This pains me to say, because I have been talking about Brock Bowers for the last 3 seasons, even when he was at Georgia, coming into the NFL and being able to take the league by storm. And it was fun to, be able to plant my flag there a couple years leading up, and then him proving it his rookie year with the Las Vegas Raiders. I think we are in for a massive regression on Brock Bowers this year. And it has everything to do with Pete Carroll, the offensive philosophy in which he implores, and it scares the crap out of me a little bit, being a Brock Bowers fan. So, he was seeing, 112 receptions last year. Where the heck is, hold on, 8.5 targets a game. 8.5 targets a game last year for Brock Bowers. Pete Carroll offense, I'm going to set the line at 5.5 targets per game in a Pete Carroll offense. And it is going to hurt big time. That is just this Las Vegas offense, even with Geno Smith, they're not going to be looking to move the ball down the field. It's going to be a lot of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They're going to be leaning on Genty hard. Still have Jacoby Myers there. Brock Bowers is there now, but I mean, he is going to have to reach double-digit touchdowns to even come close to the 204 fantasy points he put up last year in a half-point PPR setting. And I am not comfortable enough banking touchdowns, especially for the Las Vegas Raiders, that I would take him as the first tight end off the board. So buyer beware. I hope I'm wrong, because I like this guy so much. I do want him to succeed versus every NFL team except the Denver Broncos. But I am fading Bowers hard this year. There's not a snowball's chance in the sunshine that I am taking him at tight end 1 or really even in the top 4 rounds, the first 4 rounds of this year's redraft settings.
So on top of your criticism of Pete Carroll offense, who I mean is fair, but he's a defensive guy. His offensive coordinator is Chip Kelly. And I want you to go back and look at the last time Chip Kelly was in the NFL, which he was with the Eagles for the 2013 and 14 season, and then with the Giants, or not the Giants, with the Niners for the 15 or the 14 and 15 season. Right? Eagles from 13 to 15, and he was the Niners head coach in 16, excuse me. The tight end position under Chip Kelly did not get a ton of love. Now, granted, that's 10 years ago, and maybe he's learned and evolved his offense and blah, 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 blah. But like the tight end position still didn't get a ton of love. And he also never had a tight end pass catcher like Brock Bowers. But I think you're right, Kevin. There's so many other things. It was such a breakout year. Teams are going to make sure that they don't get beat by Brock Bowers this year, that we should see that massive regression that you're talking about. So buyer beware. I think when you get Brock Bowers, I think it's going to be an overspend this year.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, right? And I'm glad that you brought up the Chip Kelly offenses there, because we have seen those in the past, right? And it can lead to some good fantasy production, right? For we did see Zach Ertz emerge a little bit back in Chip Kelly's Eagles offense there as a tight end, right? San Francisco had a couple of decent performances for tight ends there, but one of the problems that I see there as well is the fact that in a lot of those offenses, Chip Kelly employs a 2 tight end system, right? And so that does put somebody else out there in that position to potentially compete for those targets there as well. So, one of those that we could see some good things from a standpoint with higher volume, a little bit faster pace of play, things like that. At the same time, too, there's also the benefit too that the quarterback play is a little bit upgraded in Las Vegas this year from what we saw last year. But I think I'm kind of with Kevin there that I think that it's going to be hard for him to duplicate, the 112 receptions, the 1,100 yards. Like, this is one that I think we're probably closer to, call it 85 to 90 on the reception side of things. We're probably flirting between about 900 and 1,000 yards, and we maybe get back to about that 5 touchdowns. So I do think that the performance will be good for fantasy, and we'll still be talking about him being a top 5 finish when we start talking about tight ends next season. But that is going to be a very drastic disappointment for anybody that spent a top 2 pick on him, and I do see some of the regression coming. So, as much as I think that there's some things that you can spin and be very positive about, at the end of the day, I do see it hard for him to return value with his draft capital.
I think his path to success is Chip Kelly moving him into the slot.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that's his path. Like, so they still have Michael Meyer, right? Like, Michael Meyer, or is it Meyer? Myers. Michael Meyer. Myers is someone else.
Yes.
Michael Meyer he's a great inline tight end, right? Big bodied frame, does well punching you at the point of attack, really will help set the ball up. So you could see the Raiders running a lot of 2 tight end sets, right? Let Genty single out of the backfield. You have Meyer in line. You have Jacoby on one side. You have Brock in the slot. And I think that's where I would be putting a lot of attention there, right? Unless we're in a goal line set and we need Bowers in line to kind of give different looks. I think a lot of his time is going to be spent in the slot. He's faster than the linebackers, right? And he's bigger than the corners or the safeties. So just you're trying to play the matchups ever so much. But I think that's what it's going to take for him to be successful this year. And if Chip's not putting him out in that slot position, again, it's unfortunate. I don't want to see it happen, but I just do not see a clear or easy path for him to finish as the number 1 tight end again. I think that will be fought between Trey McBride and George Kittle.
Fair enough. Any other thoughts on Brock Bowers? All righty. Okay, guys, that's gonna take us down to the end of it. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
Thanks everybody for tuning in. We get into running backs next week, which is always fun. Our group has a passion for the running back position, probably more so than just about anywhere else on the football field. So should be an exciting week as we start to break down those backs. But please follow us and hit us up at Good Old Boys FF. Jump over to YouTube, hit like, subscribe, get the bell. That way you guys can get the notification when we go live. at 11 p.m. Eastern time next Tuesday.
That's one.
We've got all the way to the end.
Leave
I
it to
even
Alex.
saw it too. God dang it. And it was to make a bad joke. It wasn't even for anything that was relevant. That's terrible. I'm done.
Well, Alex, it's a good summation and a way to lead us out there. So, but yeah, that's gonna do it for us tonight. Appreciate everybody tuning in, chiming in, all the questions and the fun there. So, we'll be, like Kevin said, we'll be back Tuesday, 11 p.m. Eastern next week. Hit us up on all the socials: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Good Old Boys FF. But that's gonna do it for us tonight. He's Kevin. He's Alex. Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.